No one remembered when the silence began. Only that it had lasted too long. In the center of the Helier conclave, an artificial void large enough to swallow moons, the air itself seemed to hold its breath. Light bent softly along the curved edges of the chamber, refracting through layers of transparent alloys and ancient energy fields. Stars drifted beyond the vast observation barrier like distant embers, indifferent to the gathering below. This was where civilizations came to speak carefully. This was where wars were prevented before they began. At least, that was the myth. The conclave had stood for over 90,000 standard cycles, older than most species now present, older than many still recorded in galactic memory. Its architecture bore the scars of that age. Colossal rings etched with languages no longer spoken, gravity wells humming with technologies whose creators had long since turned to dust. Every race that mattered had sent representatives here at one time or another. Empires of crystal intellects, hive minds spanning nebulae, beings whose lifespans measured epochs instead of years. And today, they had all come for one reason: humanity. The central dais remained empty. That absence drew more attention than any grand arrival could have. Across the amphitheater, delegates shifted in their assigned gravitational zones. Some floated, some stood, some pulsed faintly with bioluminescent irritation. Chitin scraped against alloy. Liquid forms rippled in agitation. Translated murmurs flowed through the conclave's linguistic field, overlapping in a low, impatient hum. They are late. They always are. Deathworlders lack discipline. They should be grateful we allow them to speak at all. The words carried no malice. Not by their standards. Just certainty. Humanity had been categorized long ago, efficiently, clinically, and incorrectly. A young species. A volatile species. Born on a high-gravity death world with unstable tectonics, violent weather cycles, and an absurd concentration of apex predators. Their biology alone had unsettled early observers: dense musculature, redundant organs, pain tolerance far beyond baseline sapience. Their psychology was worse: tribal instincts layered beneath abstract morality, capable of cooperation and brutality in equal measure. But they were small. One planet. A handful of colonies. A blink in galactic time. Useful, perhaps. Dangerous in theory. Insignificant in practice. At least, that had been the consensus. Until the borders began to burn. At the far arc of the chamber, the Varelian High Speaker adjusted the tension along his spinal crest, plates sliding softly as his many-lensed eyes narrowed. His species had ruled trade routes for 10,000 cycles. They had seen aggressive upstarts rise and fall before. Humanity, to them, was merely another problem requiring correction. They requested this address, he said, his voice amplified and translated into the conclave's neutral tone. After repeated violations of expansion accords. After refusing inspection of military assets. After declining arbitration. A ripple of agreement moved through the delegates. Their message was dramatic, murmured a Kthari observer, its elongated form coiling tighter. Final Earth's message. Such language is usually reserved for dying civilizations. A faint, humorless sound echoed from a crystalline envoy nearby. Or those about to be reminded of their place. The dais remained empty. Above it, a holographic seal shimmered, Earth's emblem. Simple. Almost crude by galactic standards. A blue sphere crossed by white lines. No weapons. No mythic beasts. Just a planet. The conclave had expected posturing. Threats. Perhaps pleas. They did not expect restraint. When the signal finally arrived, it did so without fanfare. No music. No visual spectacle. The seal stabilized, then resolved into a single human figure. They stood alone. No entourage. No honor guard. No visible weapons. The human wore dark formal attire, unadorned, the fabric absorbing the ambient light. Their posture was straight, hands clasped behind their back. Hair neatly bound. Face calm in a way that unsettled several observers who understood predator expressions. Behind the human there was no background, only black. Not the void of space. Something deeper. "I am Ambassador Elias Ward," the human said, voice steady, carrying effortlessly through the chamber. authorized representative of the United Nations of Earth and its allied colonies. No titles beyond that. No boast. The Varelian High Speaker tilted his head slightly. You stand before the Helier Conclave under censure. You will address the accusations brought against your species. Ward inclined his head by a fraction. We will. That word, will, registered strangely in the translators. Not defensive. Not submissive. Simply inevitable. Ward continued. But first, we ask that this message be entered into permanent galactic record. Unedited. Several delegates reacted at once. That is not your decision. You presume much. Your status does not grant. The human raised one hand. Not in threat. In request. The chamber quieted despite itself. For 3 centuries, Ward said, humanity has followed every protocol presented to us. We attended your summits. We signed your treaties. We accepted restricted lanes, demilitarized zones, and imposed limitations on our expansion. Images flickered briefly above the dais, colony worlds hemmed in by invisible borders, human vessels rerouted, inspection fleets hovering close. We were told this was how peace worked, Ward said. That patience was strength. That restraint proved maturity. A pause. Meanwhile, the ambassador continued, our civilian convoys were boarded. Our colonies were pressured into protectorate agreements. Our scientists were detained. The word was chosen carefully. Too carefully. The Kthari observer's coils tightened. Baseless accusations. Ward's gaze shifted, not toward the speaker, but toward the entire chamber. We did not come here to accuse. Another pause. We came to conclude. That word sent a subtle tremor through the conclave's environmental field. The Varelian High Speaker let out a slow, dismissive exhalation. You are in no position to issue ultimatums, human. Your fleets are outnumbered. Your technology is derivative. Your world is still standing, Ward said quietly. Silence followed. The human did not raise their voice, did not sharpen their tone. But something in the way the words were delivered caused multiple threat analysis subroutines across the chamber to spike. Ward continued, unhurried. You see us as a death world curiosity. Survivors of a violent planet who learned cooperation out of necessity. You assume our capacity for destruction is instinctive, uncontrolled. The ambassador leaned forward slightly. You are mistaken. Images shifted again, this time not of borders or treaties, but of Earth itself. Storm-racked oceans. Mountain ranges torn upward by tectonic fury. Predators with teeth and claws and venom. Violence, Ward said, is not our nature. It is our tool. A murmur spread, sharper now. We built laws to contain it. Cultures to direct it. Ethics to restrain it, the human continued. Peace was never our default. It was our achievement. The Varelian High Speaker rose higher on his platform, crest flaring. Careful, human. Ward met his gaze without hesitation. We were careful, Ward said. For a very long time. The black behind the ambassador deepened, and for the first time, something moved within it. Faint outlines, unreadable shapes, data streams flowing faster than translation could follow. This message, Ward said, is not a threat. It is not a plea. It is a notice. The conclave sensors began to register anomalies, human fleet signatures awakening across multiple sectors, previously masked, previously dormant. You taught us the rules of your peace, Ward concluded. We followed them. A final pause. Now, the ambassador said, voice calm as stone, you will face the other side of humanity. The chamber remained silent, and for the first time in its ancient history, the Helier Conclave realized it had misunderstood silence all along. It was not the absence of sound. It was the moment before something strikes. The silence that followed was not empty. It was crowded with recalculations. Across the Helier Conclave, threat analysis engines, some biological, some mechanical, some woven into spacetime itself, adjusted parameters that had not been touched in millennia. Probability branches shifted. Risk matrices bloomed and collapsed. Species that prided themselves on foresight suddenly found gaps where certainty had lived moments before. The Varelian High Speaker was the first to break the stillness. "You mistake theatrics for leverage," he said, crest flaring wider, his voice carrying the weight of centuries of unchallenged authority. "Dormant fleet signatures mean nothing. Many races hide vessels. Many posture. You are still bound by conclave law." Ambassador Ward did not respond immediately. That delay, measured, deliberate, was noted. "We are aware of conclave law," Ward said at last. "We helped draft portions of it. We simply no longer recognize its application when it is enforced selectively." A low hiss rippled through the chamber. The crystalline envoy refracted sharply, light scattering in jagged patterns. "Selective. Your species has benefited enormously from our restraint. You were allowed survival." Ward's expression did not change. Survival was never the goal. Several delegates leaned forward. "Expansion?" the Kthari observer asked, coils loosening slightly as curiosity overrode disdain. "No," Ward replied. "Stability." The word confused them. "Then explain," the High Speaker demanded, "why your warship production has increased by 300% over the last 20 cycles." Ward inclined his head. "Because diplomacy failed." That admission landed harder than any denial could have. "You admit militarization," the High Speaker said. "You admit intent." "I admit preparation," Ward corrected. "Intent was yours." A pulse of irritation surged through the conclave's ambient field. "You stand accused," the High Speaker said, "of violating demilitarized zones, of deploying armed escorts beyond agreed limits, of engaging conclave-aligned security forces." Ward exhaled slowly. "We escorted humanitarian evacuations. We defended civilian transports. We responded to armed boardings." He paused. "You call that engagement. We call it restraint." The crystalline envoy emitted a sharp resonance. "Your restraint left 6 of our enforcement vessels crippled." Ward nodded once. "We were careful where we aimed." That was when the first laugh echoed through the chamber. It came from a Threxian war legate, towering, plated, bred for conquest. His mandibles parted in open derision. "You speak of care," the Threxian rumbled, "yet your kind fractures under real pressure. I have seen humans break, scream, bleed." Several species recoiled slightly at the bluntness. The Threxian leaned forward, massive form casting a long shadow across the dais. "You are dangerous animals pretending to be civilized. Nothing more." Ward turned his gaze to him. Slowly. "You have seen humans bleed," Ward said. "That is true." The Threxian's mandibles clicked. "And beg." Ward's eyes did not harden. They focused. "Yes," he said. "We do that too." Something in his tone caused the Threxian's threat sensors to spike, too late. "We beg," Ward continued, "when we believe it might spare others." The ambassador straightened. "We stop begging," he said quietly, "when we learn it won't." The Threxian snorted. "Empty words." He rose to his full height, ignoring protocol, his armored limbs grinding against the platform. "You will submit to inspection. Or we will enforce compliance." Several delegates shifted uncomfortably. The Varelian High Speaker did not intervene. He wanted to see this. Ward did not look away. "You misunderstand the situation." The Threxian flexed, muscles bulging beneath layered armor. "Explain." Ward's hand moved. Not toward a weapon. Toward the air. The black void behind him rippled, and resolved. Holographic projections unfolded across the chamber, expanding outward like a controlled detonation of data. Star maps appeared. Fleet movements. Time-stamped recordings. Human colonies under siege. Convoys burning. Transponder codes flagged as pirate, yet traced back to conclave-aligned security guilds. Gasps, translated into various physiological equivalents, rippled through the assembly. "You sanctioned pressure," Ward said, voice steady. "We documented it." Images shifted again. Human vessels disengaging rather than pursuing. Retreating rather than retaliating. Civilian transports shielding non-human refugees. "We tried peace," Ward said. "Repeatedly." The Threxian growled. "Selective evidence." Ward nodded. Of course. Another gesture. The display zoomed in on a single incident. A boarding action. A human research vessel, unarmed, surrounded by Threxian enforcement ships. Audio played, distorted, but clear enough. Stand down. This is lawful seizure. Then screams. Then silence. The chamber stilled. The Threxian's mandibles twitched. War has casualties. Ward's voice dropped. Those were children. The word did not translate cleanly, but the meaning did. For the first time, the Threxian hesitated. You accuse us of atrocity, the High Speaker said sharply. This is dangerous ground, human. Ward met his gaze. We buried our dead quietly. We filed complaints. We requested inquiry. His eyes swept the chamber. You denied all of them. A heavy pause followed. Then the crystalline envoy spoke, its voice more cautious now. And this escalation. You believe it justifies itself. No, Ward said. We believe it explains itself. The conclave's sensors spiked again. This time, the anomaly was closer. Much closer. A tactical officer's projection flickered to life near the High Speaker, unbidden. Unauthorized vessel emergence detected, it reported. Human configuration. Within restricted radius. The chamber erupted. That is a violation. Remove them. Defense platforms. Ward raised his hand again. Do not fire, he said calmly. The audacity of the command stunned them. Your authority does not extend, the High Speaker began. If you fire, Ward said, still calm, the loss of this station will be logged as preventable. Silence slammed down. The tactical projection trembled. Vessel is holding position. A visual feed appeared. A human ship. Smaller than most warcraft present. Angular. Scarred. Its hull bore no ornamentation, no glowing sigils, just matte alloy and exposed scars of repair. It did not maneuver aggressively. It simply waited. The Threxian's voice lowered. One ship. Ward nodded. One crew. The Threxian laughed again, though this time there was strain in it. You insult us. Ward's gaze hardened, just a fraction. No. I am giving you restraint one last chance. The Threxian stepped forward. He crossed a boundary line etched into the platform, a symbolic threshold meant to separate speakers. Security fields hummed, then faltered as his mass overloaded them. You will kneel, the Threxian said, looming over Ward. You will submit, or you will be made an example. Several delegates recoiled. This was no longer rhetoric. Ward did not move. You misunderstand humanity, he said softly. The Threxian's massive limb shot out. He struck Ward across the chamber. The impact echoed like a thunderclap. Ward's body slammed into the far barrier, cracking the transparent alloy. He slid down, leaving a smear of blood against the surface. A collective intake of breath swept the conclave. The Threxian turned, mandibles flaring in triumph. This is your message. Ward did not rise immediately. Several seconds passed. Threat monitors across the chamber surged. Then Ward pushed himself to his feet. Slowly. His suit was torn. Blood ran freely from a gash along his temple. His breathing was audible. But his eyes were clear. This, he said, voice strained but steady, is what we meant. The Threxian froze. Ward straightened fully, wiping blood from his face with the back of his hand. You see violence as instinct, he continued. As loss of control. He took a step forward. We see it as a decision. Another step. A subtle shift rippled through the chamber's gravity field. The human ship outside adjusted orientation. Ward's voice grew firmer. You struck an unarmed envoy under conclave protection. The High Speaker surged to his feet. Cease this at once. Ward did not look at him. You wanted to know what restraint looks like, Ward said. You have lived under it. The Threxian raised his arm again. He never completed the motion. Ward moved. Not fast. Precise. He stepped inside the Threxian's reach, drove his shoulder into a joint gap in the armor, twisted, and dropped his center of gravity. The Threxian's mass worked against him. Momentum carried the larger being forward as Ward redirected it. The Threxian stumbled. Gasps erupted. Ward followed through, an elbow to the mandible hinge, exactly where sensory clusters converged. The blow was not flashy. It was devastating. The Threxian roared, staggering back. Ward did not pursue recklessly. He waited. The Threxian charged. Ward sidestepped, hooked a leg, and used the Threxian's own weight to bring him down hard against the platform. The impact cracked alloy. Before the Threxian could recover, Ward was on him, knee planted, forearm pressed against a vulnerable seam, applying pressure with surgical intent. The chamber watched in stunned silence. "This is not rage," Ward said, breathing controlled. "This is training." He shifted his grip slightly. The Threxian screamed. "Yield," Ward said. The Threxian's mandibles quivered. Ward increased pressure by a fraction. "I said," he repeated calmly, "yield." The Threxian collapsed. Silence consumed the chamber. Ward rose, stepped back, and adjusted his torn jacket. "This," he said, turning slowly to face the assembly, "is a demonstration." Outside the station, more human ships began to arrive. Not in attack formation. In orbit. Waiting. And this, Ward concluded, blood still on his face, is the other side of humanity. The conclave did not speak. They listened. And for the first time, they were afraid. The Helier conclave did not adjourn. It endured. For several long minutes after the Threxian war legate lay unconscious upon the fractured platform, no delegate spoke. Not because protocol demanded silence, but because instinct did. Across the chamber, ancient beings who had overseen the rise and fall of empires found their predictive models failing in real time. They had expected chaos. They had expected retaliation. They had not expected control. Ambassador Elias Ward stood at the center of it all, blood drying against his skin, posture restored to formal stillness. He did not gloat. He did not issue threats. He simply waited, as though the outcome of the moment had never been in doubt. Outside the station, the human ships held position. They did not advance. They did not retreat. They existed, quietly, undeniably. The Varelian High Speaker was the first to speak again, though his voice lacked its earlier certainty. "Medical units," he ordered. "Attend the Threxian." The command carried no shame. Only necessity. As automated systems moved to comply, the High Speaker turned his many-lensed gaze back toward Ward. His crest, once flared in dominance, now lay flatter against his frame. "You have made your point," he said. Ward inclined his head. "That was never the goal." A ripple of unease passed through the assembly. "Then explain," the crystalline envoy said carefully, its light refractions slower now, more deliberate. "What is your goal?" Ward did not answer immediately. He looked around the conclave, at beings older than his species' written history, at civilizations that had shaped the galaxy through slow, calculated force. He looked at them not with hatred, but with clarity. "Peace," he said. "Real peace." Several delegates shifted. "You confuse peace with deterrence," the Kthari observer replied. Ward shook his head. "No. You confuse peace with submission." The distinction settled heavily over the chamber. "For centuries," Ward continued, "you defined peace as the absence of resistance, as silence, as compliance enforced by imbalance." He gestured subtly, and the holographic field responded, displaying charts, timelines, comparative analyses. Not accusations. Records. "Humanity accepted that framework," Ward said. "We believed that if we followed your rules closely enough, eventually we would be treated as equals." His gaze hardened, not with anger, but with resolve. "We were wrong." The High Speaker folded his limbs inward, a posture that in Varelian culture signaled concession. "What you demonstrated today," he said slowly, "was unexpected." Ward allowed a thin pause. "What we demonstrated," he replied, "was restraint ending." Silence returned, not stunned now, but contemplative. Throughout the galaxy, systems far beyond the conclave began to react. Human diplomatic channels activated, broadcasting a single unedited transmission, the full recording of the conclave address, including the assault, the response, and the measured calm that followed. It spread faster than any fleet, through trade hubs, data nexuses, and cultural networks. Within hours, alien databases began updating. Species file, humanity, threat classification, revised. Psychological profile, high emotional regulation under extreme provocation. Combat doctrine, precision-based, escalation-controlled. Diplomatic pattern, non-aggressive unless thresholds are crossed. Keynote, do not mistake restraint for weakness. Treaties shifted. Inspection mandates were quietly withdrawn. Protectorate agreements dissolved under sudden legal scrutiny. Trade routes once closed to human vessels reopened, this time without conditions. In military academies light years away, instructors paused simulations to review footage from the conclave. Not of fleet battles. Not of mass destruction. Of one human standing up after being struck. Of measured violence. Of a lesson delivered without fury. The Threxian Dominion issued its first formal apology in recorded history 3 cycles later. It was brief, carefully worded, entirely sincere. At the Helier Conclave, a new amendment was added to the founding charter. It was short. No representative shall mistake composure for incapacity, nor peace for passivity. Ambassador Ward remained at the station for exactly 1 standard day after the incident. He participated in emergency renegotiations, clarified human boundaries, and refused every offer of personal honor or security enhancement. When asked why, his answer was simple. Because this was never about me. When he departed, the human ships departed with him. Still no aggression. Still no pursuit. Just absence, heavy with implication. In the years that followed, the galaxy adjusted. Not through fear alone. Through understanding. Humanity did not conquer worlds. They did not impose ideology. They did not seek revenge. They enforced lines and kept their word. Borders stabilized. Piracy declined in human-adjacent sectors. Refugees learned that human space was quiet, heavily defended, and relentlessly fair. The phrase entered galactic lexicon soon after. Do not push the humans. Not as a threat. As advice. As history. As record. And in the deepest archives of the Helier Conclave, beneath layers of data and centuries of precedent, the event was logged under a final heading, one that future civilizations would study carefully. Final Earth message. Outcome: peace preserved through demonstrated restraint. Lesson learned. Humans are not violent by default. But when pushed, they do not stop. That line was copied more than any other. It was not a warning. It was a fact.